Welcome to the Ride This Out podcast, where we talk about how to improve your mental health and strengthen your connection to nature and your community, all through one simple solution: the bicycle. My name is Zach Golding, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and mental health therapist. I'll be your host as we discuss the power of pedaling. All right, welcome into this week's session. I talk with Nate Barnum. He is a middle school Spanish teacher in St. George, Utah. Nate is an avid mountain biker. He's got some really cool stuff. You should follow him on Instagram, bike.sleep.repeat. Getting some big airs, hit some gnarly stuff. Nate went through a pretty traumatic injury through mountain biking a little while ago, and it's cool to talk to him about his recovery and his process and how he's gotten back to biking. So really cool, positive mindset that he has, and just how biking helps him get through his days. So I first found out about Nate through, I have a cousin who is a school counselor at Nate's school, and my cousin was super impressed with his story and actually shares it as an inspiration to other kids that are going through difficult times. So I hope that his story can help inspire you as you listen to this podcast, to this session. Enjoy. All right, Nate, welcome into the podcast. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I think just want to say thanks, and I appreciate you taking some time to talk with me a little bit. Just wanted to ask you to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. This is my first time ever being on a podcast, so if I sound a little weird or awkward, that's probably why.
Well, this is it's not a very professional podcast, man. So no pressure.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I'm Nate Barnum. I'm from San Diego. I grew up in California. Moved to Hurricane when I was in high school and graduated from here. Yeah, married now for 10 years. My wife, Mackenzie. We have 3 kids. We've lived in Hurricane for the last 5 years now. So, yeah,
Awesome.
I teach Spanish over at Desert Hills Middle School. Love it.
Yeah.
My favorite thing.
How long have you been doing that?
So I've been teaching for 10 years now, and I've been at Desert Hills for the last 4. So,
Cool. So you're at the middle school then?
yep, 8th and 9th grade.
Wow. Man, I got a lot of respect for middle school teachers, man. That you do a lot of work.
I don't know about that.
A lot of good work, man. I'm a therapist for teens, and that middle school kind of junior high range, that's a tough time for a lot of kids going through a lot of stuff. So I'm sure you do a lot
Yeah.
of good.
No, I just have a lot of fun there. That's all I know.
Yeah, that's rad. So tell me how you got into teaching, first of all. Like what sparked that? Like how you wanted to get into teaching Spanish and teaching middle schoolers.
So I served an LDS mission there, obviously, and I loved Spanish. Like it clicked for me better than anything ever has in my life, and I knew I wanted to do something with it. And there aren't a ton of options as far as like being an American gringo that learns Spanish of what to do with that for a career. Like becoming an interpreter wasn't a huge option as far as careers go, and I just decided to give teaching a try. So I actually got a teaching job when I was in school still, so that gave me a good taste of it. I was at like a K through 8 school, so I got to teach kindergarten through 8th grade in Spanish, and I loved it. So I just continued to finish school doing that, and I haven't looked back. So
That's awesome. That's super cool. So, I'm sure as you're, teaching the kids and stuff, there's quite a good satisfaction when some kid finally picks it up, right? Or makes some connections to the language and is able to understand some things.
yeah, definitely. Like I love seeing that when kids have that spark, but I think my biggest thing is just making connections with kids and having that student teacher relationship. Like it's just fun for me to be able to get to know new kids every year, and and just try and play some type of role in their life, whether it might not be the biggest, greatest role, but just being able to be a part of their life is fun. So
Yeah, no, I hear that for sure. And it's impactful. I think a lot of people don't really realize how impactful, teachers, especially junior high school teachers, can have on kids. So that's awesome, man. What a great work you do. So I respect that for sure. And my wife was a high school teacher for 10 years. She's taking a break now because we got 3 kids as well. And so, but I know the grind. I know that, a lot of teachers don't get definitely they don't get the pay they deserve. That's for one thing, but just the respect and just the amount of time and effort and just the grind that it is. So big
I
kudos to you
appreciate
for
that.
sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm sure that, as you're making these connections with the kids, I'm sure you got some pretty good street cred with them all, with all your biking skills, right? Like I see your Instagram, you got your BMX, your mountain bike, all the stuff you've been doing. So
Yeah, I know it's fun. I have, a few kids in every class that are mountain bikers, and so I can always make that little bit of a connection with them. Um, I think I'm generally pretty quiet about it as far as like, I don't know. It's like I live two lives, I think, sometimes. Like I have my teaching life and then my mountain bike life, and then sometimes they connect because kids will find me on there on Instagram or whatever, and it throws me for a loop sometimes, but I never mind it. It's always fun to talk mountain biking with them or anything. So
yeah, connect those two worlds, man. That's who you are. That's awesome. I love it. So yeah, tell me how you got into biking. Has it always just been, you got into BMX, or like how did you start?
um I honestly didn't start biking as much as I do until college. Um, Obviously, I biked like every kid, I think, growing up, just somewhat around the neighborhood. We had some jumps in our yard and things like that, but nothing too serious. Um, I have a buddy that I grew up with once I was up at college in Provo. He was super into mountain biking, and he, told me that I should buy a mountain bike. Once you get your bike, you're good. You're set. You can go ride trails and do whatever you want. He told me that it was, he basically tricked me because mountain biking is a very expensive hobby. And at the time it was like, yeah, you got your bike, now you're good to go, which was true. But now I'm obsessed with it, and it's like I spend way too much money on mountain biking. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. So did some road biking and mountain biking when I lived up north in Utah County, Salt Lake County, and got way too into mountain biking probably the last, I don't know, 7 years or so now. I think the YouTube world took off with mountain biking. I followed way too many YouTubers and, tried to start my own little YouTube channel, mountain biking, and never was that serious about it for very long. And and then I've just made so many connections and friendships through mountain biking that it's kind of just stuck, and it probably will forever now. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear you on the expense part, man. That's a slippery slope. Once you start getting into different mountain biking components and bikes, it can
yeah,
you can blow a lot of money on it really quick.
yeah.
So I'm curious, just I live up here in Utah County and right at the mouth of Provo Canyon. I'm just curious, what were some of the funnest trails that you rode up here, or some that you
Yeah,
remember?
so I think there's a lot of new stuff there that wasn't there when I first started biking. I That used to be probably the first 3 years of biking, mountain biking. That was pretty much exclusively where I rode. We rode like Shoreline Trail below the Y. We would
Yeah.
just do laps on that. We'd go up Provo. I can't even remember the names of all those trails now, but I I mean we used to do like a lot of random trail work up there. I think we still have some tools that are probably hidden somewhere in the bushes up there that we never recovered. Um, but yeah, we used to go up to a trail called the Altar. I think it was just a big pile of rocks up Provo,
Uh-huh.
up mouth of the canyon right there. I'm sure you know that pile. I'm sure it's still there. I haven't been up there in years.
Yeah, it's
Um,
still there.
yeah, we used to do those trails constantly, and we would, yeah, that was the main thing that I did. Once I moved to Sandy, I rode a lot of Corner Canyon, which also has changed a lot over the last several years. But those were the main places when I lived up north.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, it's been crazy, the boom of, like you say, of mountain biking, and I feel like a big benefit of all these high school mountain bike teams that have formed over the last few years. I feel like the trail systems have just been like so good, and just like they've just expanded so much to accommodate for so many of these kids that want to get into this club sport. So have you seen that very much down there in St. George?
Yeah, no, definitely the teams are growing like crazy at every school. Like I think when I first moved here, I didn't do anything with the mountain biking team down here, but I'm pretty sure they were just one. They were called the Flying Monkeys down here. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure what year they split, but they now are all individual teams, and I think every school has 100+ kids on their teams.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's growing like crazy. So the trail systems here, I know that we've had a couple newer ones, like the airport trails are out that direction, which help a lot of teams. I know. But yeah, up north, I know that that's been growing like crazy. My wife's from Pleasant Grove. I know they put in. I think it was a lot of the high school team that helped with the. I'm trying to remember the name of the trail system that's right there. It's not super big, but it's just right there in there in
Yeah.
PT, right off of the canal.
Valley
Um,
Vista is what that's called.
Valley Vista, that's what it is. Yeah, but and I know it's like that in a lot of towns right now. A lot of new systems going in different places, and which is awesome. It's so cool to see so much growth.
Yeah, I think, you go up to Corner Canyon, and if you hit it on a weeknight where the mountain bike team is there, man, good luck. Like it's
Yeah,
so busy and so packed. And a lot of people will complain about it, but I'm all for it, man, because again, it's progressing the sport and the trail systems, and it's just keeping it alive, and so many bike shops have popped up because of it. So I think it's just overall just such a awesome thing. And hey, the more kids that are biking and getting into it, the better, right? The more that this
yeah.
sport's going to thrive. So
No,
it's really
I'm
cool.
with you 100% on that. I will run into kids occasionally here, but our trail systems are so much more spread out here and so few people compared to up north, like in Salt Lake and Corner Canyon, especially. Like, I hardly started to see teams when we were up there, but when we would just make sure to ride way earlier than when they would ride. Cause yeah, you'll have moments where you're sitting there for 5 minutes plus, people just passing you, you know, and then but I think it's awesome down here though. If you see a parking lot that's packed, there's a team there, and even then I'll run into just small groups of them because they split up so well, and it's so spread out here that I just think it's awesome seeing so many people out on bikes. So
Yeah, no, it's great. It's awesome. So, I mean, you said you started getting into it, but like you're into it, man. Like you're doing some big jumps, doing some big airs. Like you're riding with some pretty big names and some pretty big people. So, like, how did that progress? Like, getting into it on that kind of extreme level, like getting the big airs and all the things that you do.
yeah, I don't know kind of how it all initiated. I think I've always been drawn to jumping and learning tricks and things like that, but I'd say probably the last few years that's really kind of sparked the most, at least my progression in that. Probably just people who I've ridden with. I think once you get introduced to certain people and different areas, different zones, then you'll start to learn, you know, different areas to ride. And then you hang out with people that do tricks, you're going to start trying tricks. And I think that's just kind of how it's progressed. Um, yeah, riding with buddies in Virgin in that area, there's a lot of areas where there's jumps and different options for that. And I think that's kind of how it started. Just different people that I've been introduced to that do that, and so I've kind of been drawn to that the most. So
Awesome. Yeah, and Virgin, that's where they do all the Red Bull Rampage stuff, right?
yeah, so I mean it's not like I go ride Red Bull Rampage lines or anything like that. But there's a lot of stuff out there I think people don't realize. Just that's really good for progression. They have a lot of easier type stuff that you wouldn't picture when you hear Red Bull Rampage. And obviously they have the like crazy ridge lines and things, but I'm generally not doing that kind of stuff. But they do have a lot of jumps and drops that are all really good if you're wanting to progress in that way. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can find and just have a good time on.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I feel like there's just so much area down there in that where you live, just untapped, right? That you can just kind of build your own stuff or find your own lines and stuff. So that's super fun.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Super cool. So and you can get into this as much as you want. I don't want to like re-traumatize you or anything, but from your Instagram and just talking with my cousin who works with you, Kenny, Um, he had mentioned that you had a pretty nasty wreck. Was that how long ago was that?
Yeah, so um, November 2021. So what, year and a half now? Um, I think it was around that same time. That year I really started pushing my own progression. I feel like in that style of riding, in like downhill and the free ride type stuff. I mean, nothing insane. I don't want to make it sound like I'm a Red Bull Rampage athlete or anything like that. Like very, if you were to talk to any of those guys, like it's very mild anything I was actually doing. Um, but yeah, we started to progress. Flying Monkey is a trail here that comes off of Smith Mesa, so it's out in Virgin. It just drops down into one of the old Rampage sites close by there. Um, and it was one of my favorite trails. I honestly haven't been back to it since my accident. But there's a trail off of it called King Kong that is kind of they call it like the Rampage warm up lap. So I think when new riders that get um, you know an invite to come to Red Bull Rampage, they generally will take them on that so they can get a feel for the exposure and a feel for the terrain. Um, and so I guess that was my goal, was to try and get a full lap on King Kong. Um, and I'd started to do sections of it. I had done the first section of it. I've done from like the middle down, but there's just some big sections right in the middle of it that are super exposed that I never rode. And one of the days we were out there, we were doing Flying Monkey, and then a bunch of us wanted to do parts of Kong. We had a couple of experienced riders with us that have ridden lots of it, or all of it, and it just felt like the right time again. And I dropped in to a section that I've ridden before and just was going in way too confident and was way too fast and just tumbled. And there's a video of it. Maybe you've seen it on my Instagram. Um, but yeah, I got pretty messed up. Um, I think I've downplayed it with a lot of people before, but it was pretty bad. I broke a lot of bones. I broke 5 ribs. I broke a part of my back. I had a compression fracture on my T8 vertebrae, and then I destroyed my wrist and hand, and I bruised my lung. So it was a pretty bad wreck. Um, where that section is on King Kong, I had to hike back out. So with that, it was like a 2 mile hike down Flying Monkey, which is a pretty technical, chunky trail. But luckily, I had a good group of friends that helped get me off the trail into a truck to get me to the hospital. So um,
You hiked 2 miles out of there, injured the way you were?
yeah, I think knowing all
What?
my injuries, it's funny because my brother-in-law, he works for Lifelight, he works for Intermountain, and he's like, he tells me all the time, you should have just called us. We would have picked you up, and they'll drop you off at your even at your truck if you request it, and uh, wouldn't have allowed me to get off the helicopter unless they took me to the hospital. Part of me is grateful I didn't, because it would have been an expensive bill. But yeah, it was a 2 mile hike back to the truck.
Wow. But I bet in that moment, right, like the adrenaline is just pumping and you're just like,
Yeah,
what do you remember what was going through your mind at that moment?
I just I think one of the guys on the ride, I hadn't met him till that day, and I honestly don't remember his name now. But he was a doctor, and I know he was behind me as we hiked down, and he just kept saying something about to one of the other guys, "Oh, I hope he's not bleeding internally." It was stressing me out. That's all I remember. I was like worried that I was gonna bleed out there on the mountain. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I do know that the adrenaline helped. I definitely didn't feel all the pain that I felt later, like hiking off the mountain or anything like that. Like the real pain came over the next several months in recovery. But
Yeah. So they rush you to the hospital and then did they just start doing surgery on you right then or just kind of evaluating everything, seeing what was going on?
yeah, so I was sitting in the truck, and I think the pain started to set in, and we got to the hospital, to the ER, and I went to stand up out of the truck, and I almost fell like to the ground because I think everything just kind of set in, like, you are broken, like there's a lot of things messed up on you. And my buddy like rushed in and was like, my friend's like collapsing. He has all these injuries, and they rushed me straight into one of the first trauma rooms, and it was all kind of a blur. There were 30 plus people in there, just coming in and out. They took me to do CAT scan. They did X-rays. They gave me some drugs finally that made me kind of loopy. That I was, I guess, pretty hysterical and ridiculous. But my wife regrets she didn't take any videos of it because I guess I said some weird things. But yeah, no, they did. They ended up just doing a bunch of X-rays. I think I stayed overnight that night. They didn't do surgery on my wrist until the next morning, and then I was in the hospital, I think, the next 4 days. So, because they had to watch
Wow.
my breathing, um, just to make sure my lung didn't collapse or anything like that. So that was the main thing, was just getting my breathing under control without any assistance before I could leave the hospital. But
Yeah, man. And
yeah,
so I mean,
it was pretty bad. Like even in the hospital, I couldn't get up. Even after the first day, I realized like I couldn't sit up in bed. Like that's how much pain I was in. Like my
yeah,
back and my ribs, I couldn't. They had a tarp underneath of me, like to get me up to, at what point? I don't even remember when they needed to. I think they moved me to a wheelchair to try and get me to sit up. That was after a few days, because other than that, I was just laying in that bed. But they needed a tarp with like two people to actually just roll me, like because I had no control like over my own upper body, like I just couldn't move it at all. It was just too broken.
geez, dude. And I'm sure, like, as you're going through all that, were you just thinking, am I paralyzed? Like, am I going to be able to walk? Like, what was going through your mind in those moments?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I wasn't paralyzed just because they did all the scans that they did and everything, and like I could move my legs fully, and my feet and everything. Like there was no pain there. It was just all basically my waist up was all in pain. Um, like my hand completely didn't function, the one that I broke, and like for weeks I had no movement. Like it was the weirdest thing. The feeling was gone in a lot of it, and um, but yeah, no, I definitely it was a lot as far as like physically and then mentally too, just like lots of regrets I felt like at the time of what have I done. I have a wife at home with 3 kids that she's fully responsible for, not that she's not capable, but where you're a parent, sounds like, and so how you feel like you need to be there, obviously, and where I'm completely stuck in a bed where I physically can't get up if I wanted to. It really was hard, just knowing that I couldn't help in ways that I would like to.
Oh yeah, that of it's like you said, that's the hardest part, just being stuck, right? And just knowing like, oh, what is going on?
Yeah.
So what,
Yeah.
during this whole recovery, I'm sure you had to do just crazy amounts of physical therapy and just all sorts of things. Like what helped you get through all of that, like mentally and just physically?
So obviously I think my wife was my biggest support. I'm so grateful that I had her there to help me. Um, yeah, because I mean, I literally I lived in a I had an electric recliner that we bought that could stand me all the way on my feet. Because without it, I couldn't stand up without someone pulling me up, and it was a ton of pain just doing that. For it was over a month, and I lived in that recliner for over a month. But I finally could get to the point with that I could get to my feet on my own to be able to go, to the restroom and things like that. But she had to fully assist me in all aspects. Like I couldn't do anything for myself pretty much for the first little while. Um, so without her, I really wouldn't have been able to make it through it. Um, Mentally, I don't even know. I it she my wife teases me all the time because she just I'm a pretty easygoing person, and so I don't know that I analyze things the way that a lot of people do. Um, and so I think even through that, I feel like I was pretty positive for the most part. I don't know, maybe she'd probably be able to say something else, but
Hmm.
I I think just trying to stay positive. I just tried to look for things every day that I felt like I was finding progress in. Um, just silly things like the first time that I was able to stand on my feet on my own with that recliner, which was after a couple weeks. and very simple things that I don't even know that I like should say over this, but just like going to the restroom, like being able to do that on my own, and like that's it's crazy, but that's I needed help with things like that, and so just finding little victories every day, I think, and yeah, with physical therapy, it was at the beginning it was multiple times a week, and just getting to the hospital, like having to load up in the car, like again being able to do certain things on my own, um, just being able to find those little bit like a little bit more of progress each time. You could see like, oh, it was this much easier for me just to sit down in the car on my own, or to like lift my legs up to the right direction without killing myself, like, putting myself in a ton of pain. So yeah, finding all those little victories every day, I think helped me kind of progress and find a little bit of relief through it all. But yeah, I don't know if that really answers what you were asking, but
Oh yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a good way to kind of look at when we go through those difficult moments, right? Is just find that positive momentum with, like you said, just standing up. I remember like I've had some surgeries in my time, and just being able to walk without crutches is like just such a monumental, like, holy cow, I made it this far. This is feels so good. And so I can't even imagine, like, you have this chair that you can't even stand up in. And so that must have just been such an amazing experience to just be on your own at that point, right?
right, 100%. Like I remember at the beginning when I would have enough energy to get to my feet, like we started to do walks just to be out of one room for the whole day. So I think like the first day I made it out to the kitchen or something, and we would move to a different chair just so I had something else to do.
All right. Sorry, Nate, you still there, man?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. So
I'm
you were
probably
just talking
talking too much.
well, I know I was just thinking, man, it's just telling us that we got to move on from this topic, I guess. But no, I just wanted to ask you, as you were going through the whole recovery process, was it ever in your mind that you wanted to get back into biking and get back into riding? Like, what was your thoughts regarding that?
um, yeah, I think that my mind probably went to some weird dark places as far as that goes at some points. Like I think I was like, I'm done biking. Like I can't do this to my family. I need to sell my bikes and be done. And then I think it kind of quickly shifted. Like I like biking way too much for that to be a reality. And so I think it was more of like, I'm going to change my style of biking. I'm going to go into more cross country style riding where you just get a lot of pedaling in, um, a little bit safer riding, like nothing high consequence. Even though accidents can happen in any form of biking, really in any form of things that we do in life, right? But I think in my mind, I was like, this will be safer, this will be better for me. Um, but so yeah, I mean, I think there was that thought at some point that I thought maybe I'd be done. But I think mostly I knew that I would get back into it eventually. It just would be a long, slow recovery back to it. So
Yeah, yeah. So at what point, right? I mean, this was a year and a half ago. At what point were your like doctors and your physical therapists like cleared you to even be able to just jump on a bike and cruise around?
um, I feel like I started trying to before I even asked them for permission, which was probably way too early on. Um, like I know I would pull my bike out and try and ride it in the front yard after like I don't even know, probably less than 2 months even. But I couldn't even use my hand at that point. Like it was just be one handed, and even my back and thing. Like it was not safe, I'm sure, for me to try and do it. I know my wife would get mad at me when I would try to, and it would just be like right in the front of the driveway, and then I'd hop off. Um, but yeah, I think I tried to do my first ride like on a gravel road at, I want to say it was in February, and I realized that I couldn't even hold my bars with my left hand, and so I just realized that it was not safe for me at that point. Um, I got like a really nice brace that basically, once I figured out how to use it, it kept my wrist completely stiff. And so I could start doing a little more riding with that. I think it was in like, I can't remember the exact months, but I want to say it was March or April when I finally finished most of the physical therapy that they wanted me to do with my wrist. Um, and when I say I finished physical therapy, like my wrist has not recovered fully and it never will. Um, like my wrist right now, it doesn't bend backwards. It's completely flat. Like it's completely stiff. I have a little bit of movement to push it forward, but it stays completely backwards. So, like even today, I went on a ride, and my wrist is still sore from that. So it's like I'll probably have pains from it for the rest of my life. I'm guessing. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So I can't believe how quick you got back on though, man. Like after all of that surgery and just recovery and just physical therapy, right? Like that's pretty wild that you got on like so quick, but
yeah. I
can't,
mean, I love biking a lot. Like it's a lot of my social life, I guess, and just my it was a chance for me to go see friends again and hang out again. And when I say I got back that quick, like definitely the first year I was not doing a lot of the trail. Like even now, I still haven't done a lot of the trails and things that I used to do. And I don't know. A part of it's probably just mental, me not wanting to go do it, but a lot of it is physical too. My wrist still. I mean, my reaction times are not the same. Being able to pull and just react in different ways, like I I feel like I'm not. I don't know that I'll ever fully be back to that again, but it's worth it for me to be able to go do. Mentally, you talk about mental health, and I think that I need it. I need the writing. I need to be able to go do that for my mental health. So
yeah,
and
no,
phys-
that's absolutely. That's what I was just going to ask you. Like getting back on and writing now, how has that helped your mental health? How has that helped you get through, all those dark times of recovery and just where you're at now?
I mean it's kind of my go-to thing when I have a lot of stress or when I just need you know to relax in some way. That's kind of my go-to thing is to be able to go on a ride. Um, in the summers, it's a little bit different. I feel pretty spoiled because I have summers off, and so I ride pretty much daily. But in the school years, it's generally limited to Saturdays, and some weeks can feel long. And once I get that ride in, or if I don't get that ride in, I might seem grumpier. I know to my wife, and so she always makes sure that I I go get my ride in because it definitely helps me to feel like a happier person. Um, but but yeah,
Love it. Yeah, no, and that's the whole kind of idea behind what I'm doing here because I've noticed that same effect on me and on a lot of the people that I work with too. Just like the effect that just pedaling and cruising, having that wind in your hair and just flying around is just there's such an amazing benefit that can just help your mental state and that's as a teacher I'm sure that again the stresses that come from teaching and all the different lesson plans and everything that you're having to deal with that just can kind of add up, right? So what a
yeah,
cool outlet that you have.
yeah, no, definitely. I think in all careers. I mean, obviously, teaching is stressful. I'll agree with that, but I know that we all have stressful moments in whatever it is that we do in life, and just being able to, for me, biking is that outlet to be able to find relief and to be able to find additional joy in life. I enjoy teaching, but yes, it can be stressful at times, and biking is not stressful for me generally. It's something that I enjoy, so it's something that I look forward to.
Yeah. Well, so you live in Hurricane, right? But you teach at Desert Hills, so that's a little bit of a ways away, right?
Yeah, so I live like right on I-15. Like
Yeah.
I'm not all the way into Hurricane, but I'm in Hurricane city limits. So it's only about 15 minutes is my drive each day. Because Desert Hills is right off the freeway too, so it's mostly just freeway miles.
Yeah. I was gonna say, man, find some back roads and get yourself a nice, e-commuter bike or something and just cruise on into school.
Yeah, it's definitely crossed my mind several times. I used to do that up in South Jordan occasionally when I taught up there. But it was a lot shorter of a commute. I think it was like 6 miles, and this one's like closer to 30 round trip. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. No, that can be the tough thing about commuting to work if you live pretty far away. But
yeah,
I'm a big believer in it, man. I've started commuting to work, and I've noticed like how much it just helps me get in the right state before I show up, or just be able to come home and just kind of unload, just kind of
yeah,
have that ability to process it by pedaling. So
yeah, that's awesome.
super cool. Well, that's awesome, Nate. Well, I'm glad that you were able to recover. I'm glad that you're back to riding again. Yeah, I follow your Instagram, man. You got some really cool stuff on there. What's your handle again?
So just at bike.sleep.repeat.
Cool. Yeah, so I would encourage the listeners and stuff to check that out. There's some really cool stuff that you post on there. But I just wanted to end by asking you, if someone's getting into mountain biking and they're a little bit nervous, right? They hear this whole story, they hear, geez, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to get wrecked like that. Like, what advice would you give to somebody getting into mountain biking or just any kind of biking in general?
I'd say just do it. Just get out and make some friends. It definitely makes it easier, I think, if you have some friends and some buddies that you can go ride with. Um, I don't really know. I mean, I think it's the biggest thing is just getting out there and doing it. I think most people end up finding enjoyment in biking, whether it be out on the road or paved path somewhere, or on a mountain bike trail. And you don't have to start crazy. You can start off and progress. And I think everyone always ends up finding what they enjoy most, and it's just a great outlet to be able to improve your mental health. Definitely.
Yeah, I love it. And just as you've been talking about with mountain biking, right? Like the spirit of progression and just kind of how that's been ingrained a little bit in your mental state and how you use that in your recovery, right? Just looking for any little progresses as you got better. So I think again, like the lessons that you can learn from those moments and can just really help you get through just about anything. So super cool, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Love it. Well, Nate, again, I appreciate you taking some time, dude, and talking with us here. But happy trails, man. I wish you the best and keep riding out there. All right, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll have to ride sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll hit you up. I go down to St. George every once in a while, so I'll hit you up for sure.
Sweet. Thanks,
Okay.
Zach.
All right. Thanks, Nate.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too. All right. Big thanks to Nate Barnum again for coming on and discussing his story with us. I know that it can be a difficult thing to discuss some of these injuries and some of the hard times that we go through, but it's also a therapeutic process to talk about it. That doesn't mean that we go around and share the nitty gritty, hardest things with everyone around us, but I think sharing our story with people around us can hopefully help us and also inspire others around us. And then when we inspire others, it then helps us through those difficult times too. It kind of gives us a purpose. So, again, that was pretty remarkable what he'd gone through and just the mindset that he had as he approached his treatment, his therapy, and getting back to his biking. So, a lot of people would just would have given up and never have wanted to touch a bike again. But I think it shows the love that he has for biking and how biking has helped him. So even though, we can have some wrecks at times, we can go through some difficult situations, doesn't mean that we have to completely give up. We might have to adapt, might have to change some things. But so that was a big takeaway from hearing Nate's story for me. So again, big thanks to him. Awesome that just all that he's gone through and where he's at now. So thanks for listening, guys. Give me a rating. Share it with your friends, share it with others around you. Let's kind of spread the word that we can have some benefits from biking and get through difficult times altogether. So that's the whole idea with this. All right, let's ride this out.